Ted Cruz does not like when you ask him tough questions, certainly not about his money. And we've got some funny money that came to to Ted Cruz to look into right now. So reporter Shannon Ryan had, I don't even think a tough question for Ted Cruz. I think a fair question for him about the fact that his reelection campaign's political arm received a sizable donation from iHeartMedia. You might be familiar with it from like internet radio and podcasting and all that. That is the same media company you might know that produces and distributes The Verdict with Ted Cruz, his podcast. They gave the campaign arm of his political action committee $630,000, $850. What you're seeing right there, by the way, that is a separate super PAC that got $215,000 from iHeartMedia. So that's not directly affiliated with Ted Cruz, but it is money that will be used for his reelection. He got far more money, and that's direct money to his campaign. Now, iHeartMedia does lobbying. They've actually done millions upon millions of dollars of lobbying over the course of the last 20 or so years. So it's not like this is new, but the fact that he has a podcast on your platform and now you're effectively giving him money to use for his own political goals seems suspicious and maybe illegal. Before we continue with the story, we depend on members to keep on going. Don't wait, click join now on YouTube. Full disclosure, by the way, my wife works for iHeartMedia. That said, I'm gonna be very critical of their lobbying here, so I don't think it's really a conflict of interest. In any event, Cruz has previously claimed that in the deal in which his podcast was acquired and will be distributed, he is not compensated for it by iHeartMedia. And the reporter Shannon Ryan, who we'll return to, noted that iHeartMedia employs several political lobbyists. That is important. Both parts of that are important. That he's not compensated and that they have lobbyists. And it's important because he can't be compensated because they have lobbyists. It would be impermissible under Senate rules for Cruz to accept gifts except of quote nominal value. So, if they give him a mug with the verdict on it, he could get that. Especially given his position on the Senate Commerce Committee, which theoretically could pass or not pass legislation or regulations that affect iHeartMedia. So he can't be paid by them thanks to Senate rules, which are very lax, but at least they have this restriction. Okay, so he can't be paid and he's not being paid, but nearly $1 million has now been handed over for his exclusive benefit to keep him in office. And so I think that's worthy of a question. Shannon Ryan also thought it was worthy of a question. So she asked, if an entity which employs lobbyists is giving hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to your reelection efforts, how can you say you're not being compensated? And look, he took that question very seriously. I'm kidding. He completely avoided answering the question and distracted, instead saying, it really is sad what's happened to the media, which is the media exists right now seemingly to parrot left-wing Democrat attacks. The group that brought that attack is a left-wing Democrat attack group. And by the way, you know what you didn't mention in your question? The fact that they filed a complaint with the Senate Ethics Committee raising these same issues. You know what the Senate Ethics Committee did? They threw it out. They said it had no basis in law. So all the Democrats are left to do is make false personal attacks. I get you're gonna carry their water, but my request to you is simple. Actually cover the issues. So we're gonna return to the issues. Let's go to his little distraction there. The ethics complaint that he's already faced back in 2022. So it does exist. It's not strictly speaking what he described it as, but it does exist. So he was referencing a 2022 complaint lodged with the Senate Ethics Committee, which challenged the podcast deal initially, when it was initially set up, and not the money that was pumped into the PAC. So he's kind of lying about the fact that this has already been adjudicated by the Senate Ethics Committee. It hasn't. This is new. He does not want it to be adjudicated by the Senate Ethics Committee, but it in fact has not. Now, let's say that it had though. His defense is the Senate Ethics Committee already looked at it and they said it's cool, which I'll remind you, they didn't. But again, let's say that they did. Okay, the Senate Ethics Committee it's senators on that. Senators who want to be given gifts and money and compensation. Are we pretending that they are like the ultimate arbiters of that which is ethical? And even if you assume that he's not breaking the law, which I haven't seen strong evidence, like very clear evidence that it is breaking the law, it clearly presents ethical issues here. And that is why the attacks against reporter Shannon Ryan from Ted Cruz are so ridiculous. Like all you have is this attack group from the Democrats. No, she's asking the question. Maybe a Democrat attack group brought it up, but now that they did, and all the facts are true, they're not wrong in any way, she has a legitimate question. You know who else does? Me. Maybe you in the audience. It seems suspicious that $1 million has been given. How are you gonna pretend that that is not gonna affect your view or your relationship with iHeartMedia when in an election cycle they give you $1 million? Come on. Look, I'm not saying like this should have you locked up or you should have to return the money or you should have to not run for Senate. But just on like a human level, man to man, come on, you're really gonna tell me that that's not highly suspicious right there? And he's not gonna tell you that. That's the important thing. He is never gonna respond to the actual accusations because it's indefensible. He would look utterly ridiculous if he did that. So instead, it's fake news media and Senate Ethics Committee and all this nonsense that doesn't actually address the actual issue. And I will close with this. It's not even my only issue with Ted Cruz. I think that money is highly suspicious. I don't think that iHeartMedia should be giving him money. I don't think it should be giving anybody money. I don't think businesses should be lobbying at all. But it's not up to me. Here's my other issue with Ted Cruz and with Verdict with Ted Cruz, his podcast on iHeartMedia. You wanna bring up this graphic? You know what you see there? You see what you can see for any podcast on Apple Podcasts. You can bring it up and you can see the most recent episodes. You can do that for the damage report. And if you do, please rate and review us. But what you see there is his past episodes. Now, you might be looking at like the titles of the episodes and you might be like, oh, did he talk about something stupid? No, that's not why I'm bringing up this graphic. You notice something else on this? Bidenomics Makes Home Ownership came out on April 3rd. Biden Woke Easter, No Jesus Allowed, which isn't true at all, came out on April 1st. He had an episode on March 30th. He had an episode on March 29th. He had an episode on March 27th. He had an episode on March 25th. He is a sitting senator and he arguably puts out more content than I do. And this is my full-time job. We put out 5 episodes a day. We're doing just fine. He is recording hours and hours. Those are not short episodes. I thought, okay, maybe he sits down on a Monday and he records 2 hours and then he puts it out. No, it's 40 minutes, 47 minutes, 39 minutes, 38 minutes, 1 hour and 3 minutes, 38 minutes. He is putting out a full episode virtually every day. He's supposed to be a senator. We were raised to believe that it was the greatest deliberative body in the history of the world. But he wouldn't know because he's never there, because he's hosting his podcast instead. And that is his right. And I honestly say, hosting a podcast is great. I love it. I do it all the time. I've put out thousands of podcast episodes. But if you want to do that, Ted Cruz, go do that. Have that be your job. If that's your passion, then follow your passion. Because I'm of the crazy position that being a senator for the great state of Texas is kind of a cool thing itself. And that they deserve in Texas a senator who actually gives a damn about the position and doesn't just see it as a way to promote their stupid content on Apple Podcasts. Anyway, that's not gonna get him on any ethical problems, but it probably should. I'm worried about them raising money in certain ways, but I'm also worried about them not doing their goddamn job. And he doesn't seem particularly interested in doing it. Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.